Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to a first conversation. These are episodes from the Eddy Network podcast of 2023, where the conversation that we have is the first one we've ever had. Today's episode is with Robin Davis. Robin is a young man in Great Britain who is doing some interesting work in the field of analysis. I'll let him describe what all that is. But even more than that, he's a fella I've really enjoyed getting to know, and we've stayed in contact ever since our episode mid-year last year. So I hope you will find that this is interesting. I hope that you can see that the way we begin a conversation with someone that we are just meeting really matters, because it may mean that this person becomes someone that we continue to be in interaction with or in a relationship with. So I'm glad you're here. Welcome to the first conversation that I had with Robin Davis. We'll see you next time here on the Eddy Network podcast. Bye-bye. Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddy Network podcast. And my guest today is Robin Davis, tech guy and believer in human potential, which to me is, it's one of those things that I just love to talk about. And we'll talk about that and many other things. So welcome, Robin.
Welcome. Hello.
Thank you. And tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you came to do that, and anything that you kind of want to tell us about.
Well, how far back do I go? I went to a public school. I had my mum and dad got divorced, and I had about a year out, what people would call, I don't know, confidence problems. So I basically couldn't go to school for a while. But then when I did go back to school, I don't know how I did it, but I then suddenly became very bright. I went to university. I went to Cambridge. I did engineering for 10 years. I did a controls and electronic engineering, then became controls and electronic and software engineering, then became a software developer, then moved down to London and worked at Accenture for 10 years and various blue chip clients around there, migrating up into architecture and team management. And I found that leading teams actually really gave me a nice passion, seeing people actually develop. I went independent in 2008, just before 2 weeks before the markets crashed. Good timing.
Yeah, ready to go.
So I didn't have much. So I wanted to leave. So I knew there was a crash coming up, and I wanted to leave and get another permanent job before that happened. But 2 weeks wasn't enough. So I did a bit of thinking, and I thought, well, let's go into the contracting market, set up my own company, and been contracting till just before the pandemic, when I'd engaged a career coach. It's a career coach number 3, actually.
Yeah.
To help me pivot, because I've never been what I call in the groove of everyone else's groove. I've always been one groove, one side or the other. I know it's all one groove, but but I've never quite felt as if I'm on the same path as everyone else, which is probably a good thing. But I did this last bit of career coaching to help me pivot away from the famine and feast life cycle of contracting into more of a portfolio executive lifestyle, where I have multiple clients, fractional clients. And it's at the same time that I came across this thing called the GC index, which we'll talk about. So that was one of my major services that I use in my portfolio executive lifestyle, and I'm still technically launching it. I'm making a name for myself. Just need to get some clients, and in the current economic climate, that's a bit difficult. But anyone I talk to, fine, but being able to get to talk to them is difficult.
So you've been through a lot of transition in your career.
Yes, and I think some of that is, I mean, we're part of Barbara Cleave's polymath group.
Right.
I think some of that is because I am curious. I'm always curious, but I also get bored. However, I do know that I can get very deep analytical, and that was in career coach number 2. That was that even though I'm very good at being deep dive analytical, I do go down a rabbit hole, and it also upsets me as well, because I get frustrated that I can't do some of the things which I would expect to be able to do quite quickly, not very quickly at all. So yes, I have been through a number of transitions, but I think most people do.
So what does boredom mean to you? I'm curious, because I also don't like to be bored. So how do you what is boredom to you?
Oh, it's just doing repetitive tasks all the time, without finding or being able to find a better way of doing it. Now, there is always a better way of doing it, but then it's just the frustration of actually implementing it. So you may have the idea in your head, but you just don't want to go through the individual steps of actually making it happen. You want someone else to take that off you. And AI is actually, can be quite useful for that. I've been playing with AI for the last 6 months, and it can be quite useful to help stave off the boredom a bit, and actually turn some of that around into curiosity as well.
Do you feel like you're a creative person?
I wouldn't call myself creative. I can't draw to save my life. That's one of the reasons why I did sciences.
Yeah.
And use computers. But I think,
let me ask it in a different way.
Yeah.
Do you take ideas and then creatively see how they can be expanded and to go in different directions? And I mean, that seems to be the kind of things that a coach does, and then people who are entrepreneurs kind of do. And is that something that you've learned to do over your career?
It is, and we'll see. I do have a medium energy in what we call a game changer proclivity. So I do like to think about ideas. I do like to get ideas from totally unrelated subjects, things that will automatically inspire you and think, oh, that's an interesting, concept or whatever else. I can apply that in what I do.
Can you give us an example of maybe something when that happened?
Well, one happened a few weeks ago. So I know you interviewed Alan Rayner as well, and he's in that polymath group. And he came up with the quote in the polymath group. I'm going to get it slightly wrong, but it says, whatever most needs to be known is what's least known to be needed, or something along those lines.
Got it.
And I thought that is lovely, elegant, because I used to love maths at school. And beauty of maths is, when you find an elegant solution, that really works. And that quote, it was symmetrical, it was elegant, and it really said what the problem is, that people don't see what's directly in front of their face. Whether they don't see it or they don't want to see it. And I'm coming to the conclusion that quite a lot of people don't want to see the plain obvious that is in front of their face.
And why do you think that? What is it you're seeing that would lead you to that conclusion?
I think a lot of that is today's society, that it's so accelerated, and it's accelerating even more. And people that I talk to in their jobs, whatever else, they are snowed under. They're just running full sprint, just trying to stay upright, basically. And they just have not got the time or the bandwidth. And I suffer that myself. I mean, I have to-do lists as long as three arms, and the real value adding stuff I don't get to do because the day gets sucked up doing various other bits and pieces that by the time I actually get around to doing the value adding stuff, I'm too tired and it's the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think people would like to spend more time doing more valuable stuff, but I think today's society and the job market, people's security in jobs and everything else, I think people are just too exhausted.
It seems to me that, I mean, I totally agree with you, and I see exactly what you're saying, and that the way organizations are structured, the way businesses are structured today, is not oriented around them fulfilling the potential that they bring to the company, but rather to fulfill some kind of preconceived idea of the tasks that are required to do the job on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I saw a post this morning from one person in my group, another group, saying about talent, and companies are finding it very hard to find people with talent, yet alone that will actually want to apply it, because certainly people of, let's say, our age are migrating away from the large corporates. And I think some of that is actually down to the pandemic, but people didn't realize what sort of a treadmill, what sort of a rat race they were in until they were working from home during the pandemic and everything else. And they suddenly realized, hold on, what have I been doing all my life? What am I getting out of it? Especially when, most corporates, they show no loyalty to their staff. They'll get rid of them at the drop of a hat. And people just think, well, hold on, that's not the deal.
It was kind of an awakening.
So people are migrating away from that to spend more time, living up to their principles, living up to their values, and doing things that they like, things that they're passionate about.
So let's talk about the tools that you use to help people reach their potential. And you've mentioned one already, but tell us a little bit about how you work with people.
Yeah, I mean, I've done pastoral stuff in terms of leading teams and a whole service line at Accenture, and I always enjoyed, having one-to-ones with people, going through their daily challenges. I call myself a servant leader. I want to clear all the blockers from my team to enable them to actually do the work that they're best at doing. But the one-to-ones where you actually went through the career development and you take an interest in them, that's when you really get their engagement. They realize that you are not just a boss. You do actually care about them, and when you see them grow and develop, it's great. That was my pastoral side. So even when I was leading these service lines, I specialize in architecture and architecture transformation. So that's very process, technology oriented, lots of frameworks and everything else. And I've always dealt with frameworks, but I don't implement one framework at a time. I find the relevant bits out of the relevant frameworks, piece them together depending on what the client actually needed. So something that will work for them. But there was no framework that ever dealt with the people dimension. Nothing at all. There's a Sophia framework, but that did exactly the same as any other sort of framework. It put a label on people.
Yeah.
It put them in other little buckets. So most people have a label, role title, business architect, project manager, business analyst, or whatever else. You are identified by your role title, not by what you actually bring to that role title, or not even the situation in which that role title is used. So like a project manager, you may have a long-term 3 or 4 year project. You want a different type of person to someone who is coming in to rescue a failing project and has to get their hands dirty. So in 2021, I came across the Game Changing Index, which is the new people framework. It's developed by psychologists. They were engaged initially to identify for business, how do they identify game changers? The people like Steve Jobs of the world and all that. So people that come up with the brilliant, weird ideas from left field. And they did that, but they realized there's a lot more data behind it. So they came up with different proclivities. So your proclivity is basically your natural tendencies to do things that give you energy and things that you have energy in.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have the 5 proclivities. We have the game changer, so they come up with the left field ideas. We have the strategists who make sense of those ideas, so they structure it and work out what needs to be done or whether it's viable. We have an implementer who makes those ideas happen, so they're very action oriented. Roll up their sleeves. They just want to get things done. We have a polisher who makes those ideas perfect, or all for continuous improvement. And then they still realized there was something missing, and they found that there was a sort of aggregate score in the middle for what they call a playmaker. So someone who actually orchestrates other people. And this isn't proven. It's my hypothesis that a very good natural leader is probably a very high playmaker. Without knowing, they know how they can assess people for the value that they actually bring, and they can get the best out of them. Now, sorry.
So we're putting a team together. These 5 things, these 5 roles, you'd be wanting to staff, so to speak, to each of these 5 roles. Is that correct?
No, it's actually each individual has energies in each of them, and I'll just flash that briefly.
Okay.
So the green one, where I'm a 5, that's the game changer. The blue one is the strategist. The red one is the implementer. The ambery yellow one is the polisher, and in the middle you got the playmaker.
Well, my approach to leadership for forever has been that leadership is not a role or a title. It's rather how we function, and that all leadership begins with personal initiative to create impact that makes a difference that matters. And that would fit really well into that framework there, because each one of those, you call it proclivities, each one of those is a way for people to take personal initiative. And I really like that. That's
well, it is. I mean, it's one way to understand yourself and what makes you tick. So I've done personality psychometrics, I've done Myers-Briggs and various other things, and yes, I'm an INTJ, but by and large, I do move around a bit. I'm also an adapter. Adapter motivational style. So I will actually I will metamorph into whatever a team needs that it's lacking.
Right.
What was my point on that?
Well, you're describing the way we operate within these teams or within the company.
Yeah, I mean, your natural energies are what give you energy and what you can actually express. So you don't know what makes you tick until you understand that. And the Myers-Briggs, etc., and the personality psychometrics, when you say I'm an INTJ, people will say, well, that's nice, but so what? What does that mean? What impact can you actually provide? It's too abstract for people to really understand what impact you can actually provide to yourself or to an organization. Whereas with the GC index, we can just explain the proclivities, obviously a bit more explanation than I've given today, just in a few minutes, and we get people to actually estimate what they think their energy levels are. And they're pretty much spot on. So if you can actually explain to people something so simple and they can get it so quickly, it enables people to actually communicate as well as understand themselves. It enables them to actually, they have something in which to communicate, or with which to communicate with other people. And that is the whole beauty of it, because so many people are in jobs where they're frankly terrified. They don't want to poke their head out, because everyone has weaknesses, but this doesn't deal with weaknesses. This is all on your strengths and on your energies.
Yeah.
People don't want to poke their head out because they are terrified. They're being employed as a business analyst. They have to look like a business analyst. But it's during this journey of looking at this with individual people, and even just talking to people that have been doing the same sort of role as you. I mean, another consulting network where people have been doing the same sorts of roles as me, but they have such a broad, varied background that you just think, if I just looked at your role title, I would have no idea about the richness that you actually bring. And the GC Index helps people actually understand themselves and what value they do actually bring, because not many people actually know what their own strengths are or why they act in that way. Not at all. You only seem to find out what your strengths are by talking to other people, and other people saying, Ed, how the hell do you do that so easily? And you go, well, can't everyone? Nope.
Yeah. Well,
no one knows that. However, like everything, bad news travels fast. If you do something bad, you find out about it very, very quickly, but you don't if it's your strengths.
That's true. That's very true. So let me. I have two questions. I'll ask the first one first. So, how does a person learn about this index and acquire the knowledge that comes from this index? How does a person who would be listening or watching this podcast take the step to say, I want to figure this out for myself, and because I want my potential to be fulfilled in my work and that sort of thing. So how would they find that out?
Well, first off, get in touch with me. So I mean, so I'm what we call a GC partner. There are about 300 of us around the world and growing. So we use it as a sort of main thread throughout our services to address that people dimension. So, but they can get in touch with me. Because it's an online assessment. There's 59 questions online, which normal sort of psychological type of questions, and it will assess what your energies are. We then actually go through it as GC partners or GCologists with them to actually validate it and also explain it sufficiently and go through as to say, okay, these are things that you can glean from this. So, like for mine, my red implementer score is a 5, which is an average score. So you'd think that I'm quite happy to roll up my sleeves and get things done. And to a degree, I am, but that is only for me. I'm willing to roll up my sleeves to get things that I want to get done, but I don't want to do it for other people. And it's insights like that, but it all rolls up.
That's really great. Yeah. That's really great. Okay, my second question is, if you're a business owner or you're the head of a division within a corporation, how does that person begin to rethink how their people function, where this tool might be beneficial in implementing a new maybe structure for the team or the division, where they're going to work differently than they've worked in the past, and this tool becomes a way of identifying how that can happen. What does that person who is in a position, an executive position, how do they begin to approach this?
Well, I mean, there's the bottom up and there's the top down. So the bottom up, if we start with the individual, we do the profile for each of the individuals in a team or whatever else, and then we'll actually do a team workshop. So as well as your individual proclivities, it scales. So even to teams, We have basically 5 basic profiles for a team, psychological profiles for a team. So, and out of those, we can see how effective that team is based on the context and based on the objectives that they want to fulfill. And we can also go to business unit level as well. But we have various tools that we use, or various practices that we use to actually get the most out of that team as they actually go. Because I do target operating model type work as well, which is more processes and frameworks. But in that, people were normally treated as roles, as commodities. 5 business analysts, 10 project managers, etc. Or even at the leadership team, you're the leader of delivery, you're the leader of whatever. But we can actually go through as we go. Once we've done their profiles, we can actually go through with the leadership team and say, okay, well, you really like doing that stuff. You don't like doing that, but you do like, someone else likes doing that, and not doing that. You can say, okay, we now understand each other better. We know what makes each other tick. So we can actually trade off each other and work with each other. It helps build up trust within the team. It helps the team actually gel together a lot more effectively. So even just by looking at the team profile and individual profiles, you get so much insights as to what energies may be missing in the team. You can see problems arise before they even arise. You can identify the problems. It gives you a talking point that you've never had before. And the one example I thought of today. So, a professional athlete, they use Fitbit trackers and all sorts of things, to measure how to actually improve how they operate. They don't just have an annual sort of appraisal or annual survey in which they write, which they fill out,
right,
to improve themselves. That just wouldn't work. This is the equivalent of that. So we can actually do the GC index. That gives them something which they can then use going forward. It gives them a lot of insights. I mean, people can have completely exactly the same profile, but it all comes down to the context as well. So like my implementer score, when people understand each other better, they're better at communicating what it is, because they have a common language and framework on which to actually base it on. The other side of it is we do actually use the GC index to advise, venture capitalists or private equity firms who are looking at investing or taking over companies. Because we can have a look at the CEO, we can have a look at the board, and we can have a look at what their objectives are. And it's quite simple. When you see the profile, you think they got problems doing this, this, and this, and you ask them, and they go, yes, we do have problems doing that. Okay, we have something to utilize. So it's what we say. It's not a diagnosis. It won't solve everything, but it is a diagnostic data point. That's something that you've never had before. Just like the athlete with Fitbit and various measurement tools. Without that, you're flying in the dark. Because before that, people had to try and interpolate what impact people could actually provide to a team by inferring from their expertise, their experience, and their personality. So CVs, LinkedIn profiles, certifications, they had to try and infer what impact people can actually bring. Now we go straight to it and go, right, this is your potential to make an impact.
So have you used this, as you have used this with your clients, is there, I always look for patterns of behavior. Are there patterns that are showing up which are kind of clues that there's a vulnerability in the organization, that this tool is ideal for shining a light on and providing a catalyst for a positive change?
It definitely does that. We also have another tool as well now called GC Translate. So whereas the GC index is for the people side of it, We also have a thing called GC Translate, which actually looks at written documentation. So we can have a look at strategy documents, we can have a look at vision, mission, strategy, we can have a look at role profiles, and we can actually help them look at the energy within their written documentation to say, okay, out of this role title or out of this role, is this what you really want? Because looking at your team, you actually want something different. So we can shortcut all of that, make it a lot more efficient, a lot more effective. Straight away, I did 3 live profile, I did 3 live translations of CIO roles. They all wanted very different things. And I think one was a CIO for NATO, one was a CIO for the post office in the UK, and one was a CIO for, can't remember. But they all wanted very different things. But then when you look at potential candidates, you got their profile, and you can quite easily see, is this person a good match or potential good match or not? You can't tell everything just from the role profile, but right. You can see once you've shortlisted people, it gives you either as the interviewer or whatever else, it gives you something that you can then talk about with the candidate.
So it suggests to me that companies where there is a strong break, say, between the executive and the managerial levels, with another strong break at the worker level, and that's oversimplifying the structure and of these layers of an organization, that there has to be some willingness to cross those boundaries and say, we need to be more in touch with one another. We need to be talking more. And not only do we need to be talking more, we need to be listening more to one another. And in my experience, that's the kind of, it's not the number one challenge, but it's one of the great challenges I think people and organizations face, is how do you break down those barriers of communication and of relationship? I think it's relationship, so that people can operate with respect towards one another and a sense of mutuality, of communicating back and forth to say, okay, this is what we need, and this is where we need to go, and what do you think? And well, I think that's exactly right. Oh, great. So now we're in agreement. That sort of process of communication and collaboration, I think, is really important. And it sounds like these tools that you all have developed are perfect for this process.
It is. I mean, I wasn't surprised when one of my top proclivities came out as a playmaker. Playmaker and strategist are my top 2 proclivities. So the playmaker is the people person. I've always had very good feedback from anyone that I've led to say, you're the best boss that I've had and all that sort of stuff. I haven't done anything. I've just,
That's right.
I just listen to you and I, help address your problems. So when I came out as a playmaker, I thought, oh, that explains it. But even a couple of clients where they worked in silos, I just think, well, yes, you're all very good at doing your jobs, but you're not addressing common problems. So I actually just got managers from each department and I said, right, we're going to go down the pub once every 2 weeks. We're going to do what I call bring out your dead session. So we're going to go down the pub, have a few drinks, but we're going to talk about our each individual problems that we're encountering, and we can address them as a team, or at least be aware of them happening. They absolutely loved it. I just think, to me, it's common sense.
Who would know that? I mean, I see that, and I think this sounds great, and I think for people who are watching the show today, I think whether you're a middle person in the middle of an organization or at the top of an organization, you really need to be thinking about, how do we communicate better? How do we work better together? And here is a tool that can help you do that. And I think it's worth investing, an hour, let's say, at the very least, to maybe talk with Robin about this. Because I think if you can, let me put it this way, if you can turn around an organizational structure that's been hardened over years and years of not talking to one another, and if you can change that climate, that environment, then you have done something truly remarkable and probably makes it very possible that you will survive all the stuff that we're going through now. Would you agree with that?
I totally would. I've been doing a series of posts on LinkedIn where I actually map the employee life cycle onto the Harvard Business Review's service profit cycle or service profit chain, going from employee experience to employee engagement to employee retention, employee productivity, and then to the actual strategic outcomes. And I had a look at the challenges at each of those levels, each of those stages, and had a look at what the financial costs or implications are from a UK perspective. But it's quite scary how much we actually waste each year without really recognizing it. And you just think, even a small change to some of that, it's going to make people's lives happier. They're going to be more engaged. They're going to be more productive. You're more likely to deliver on those projects or programs because, whatever stats you look at, most projects or programs, about 74% of them fail. There's a very broad spectrum. And it's always been quite puzzling to me. I think, how can they fail? So many of them fail. But I think, everything is driven by people. A bit less so with AI coming up, but well, everything's driven by people. And if you have one or two people in the team that aren't bought in, that's it. That could be curtains. But,
well, what you're describing is I've seen for over 40 years. So it's not the problem's not new, but this is a new tool to help alleviate the problem. I think it's really great. So let me ask you one more question, and I'm curious, and this is more a philosophical question. It's not a technical question, but it has to do with people. Do you believe, what do you believe about the potential of people? I mean, how far can a person reach in terms of fulfilling their potential? What do you think? What do you think there?
Well, I think the sky's the limit. People have so much potential. I mean, put people in a hardship situation, and they are very inventive, very innovative, and they will find a way out. Sometimes with help. Sometimes they'll ask for help. Sometimes not. Sometimes they want to do it on their own. But people have such great potential. But most of the time, I don't think they even realize what potential they have until they are put into that situation. Have I been stretched? I have at times of my life. Have I reached my full potential? Probably not. I don't think so.
Right. Well, I asked that because I think what I see in the research and the interaction with people that I have is that, to put it in the most simple terms, people don't believe they have something to offer in many cases, because the places where they have worked has kind of diminished that idea because it becomes inconvenient and a mess to deal with people who want to be creative. They stay in your lane, do your job, do your task, and don't offer anything more. And when it could be really beneficial if they were free to go do that. So that's why I asked the question, because I think most people I know are underperforming to their potential, but they have if they were in the right relational context where their supervisor or the head of the company said, "I believe in you, and I believe that if you were to give your best, you reach your potential, that it would be a tremendous benefit to our company." When you have that sort of ideology, let's say, call it an ideology operating, then all of a sudden people's perception changes. And I would suspect that you have a much better way of retaining high quality talent as a result.
Yes, no, I completely agree. People are extraordinary, and certainly if you've cultivated people within an organization or in a team and they leave, I mean, it's great if they leave because they've outgrown the team and they're on the next step of the journey. That's fine. But if they leave under other circumstances where they're just disengaged and they've just had enough, That's not good. And I went to a round table a few months ago where this topic came up, and these big corporates, they all sort of accepted that they lose talent, and how do they remedy the talent? They were asked. Oh, we just need to recruit more people. I think no. You're accepting that there'll be
the cost there of recruiting new talent is so much greater than retaining quality talent. And I'll just say this other piece, because what I have found, and this, I mean, I didn't see this for a very long time, but I was always asking the question, why do people stay at a place where it's clearly they're, the people that they work for are not really interested in them? And this is what I ended up realizing. If there's this is a long phrase, long sentence, that there is a persistent residual culture of values that emerges from the bottom up in an organization, and it persists because it resides in the relationships of the people. And when you allow the people the opportunity to do good work, and they're supported and they're affirmed for their good work, then a culture of persistence and resilience emerges, which can carry a company through hard times, and in particular into good times that really cause the company to flourish.
Yeah, I mean, it's, whether you call it sort of wartime scenario, whatever else. So yes, in bad times, if you have that kind of team, you'll have each other's backs and you will get through it. And in good time, I mean, it may be why people like work. Some people like working for startups, because they do have that small team. And they can build up the trust. They can have the good times. Sometimes they'll just have to put their head down and get through it. It's all so true. So it's so simple and so plain.
Well, the publicity tends to be with the people at the upper level, and never about the people in the middle and the bottom. So that's what I see. I've seen, and so those are the people I like to celebrate and to affirm. And
it is so true. And I think certainly people at the middle and lower levels, a lot of them just do turn up for work and just do the hours to get paid, because they know that they don't really have any control or any say. No matter what they do, no matter what ideas they come up with, they're just going to get squashed. And as you say, they're going to be put back in their little box and say, right, that's your box, you stay there. That's your role, that's your commodity. Don't stray out your lane.
So what you're doing is you're a catalyst for change in a changing environment, and I think that's worth celebrating.
Well, I'm one of many. It's a growing sort of foundation of us, little army of us that are trying to do good. The objective, I think, is to get to 4 or 10% of the world's population. I mean, we do actually have a young person's equivalent of the GC index called the Young Persons Index, which we use in schools. I'm not accredited in that. But that's having such a massive impact in schools, certainly after the pandemic, with kids suffering from anxiety and lack of confidence, especially in this volatile, uncertain, cruel, whatever world. They have no idea whether to go to university, what course to do, what subject to do, whatever. We actually go into schools with these Young Persons Index, which is exactly the same as the GCI. And the feedback that we get from the kids to say, I know my value now. I do have value. I'm not a worthless lump of flesh. Wow. I do have value, and I can understand some of the time why I am the way I am.
Wow.
It's giving them confidence, reducing anxiety, and just seeing that. And I say to GCHQ, I say, God, I wish we had this when I was at school.
Yeah,
me too. It would have saved me three lots of career coaching for a start off.
Yeah, well, that may be the greatest thing that you have to offer is the development of the next generation of people who will enter the workforce, and they will enter having a clear sense of who they are and what they have to offer, and and as a result, the organizational community will have to shift to, okay, these are the people who are coming forward. How do we adapt to them rather than them having to adapt to us? So how do people find you if they want to talk with you or learn more about the index?
Oh, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. So it's Robin Davis. My company is Assuritivity Consulting Limited. That's a bit of a mouthful, but think of assurance and productivity and quality squished together into one word.
I like that.
Assuritivity, and there'll be details on this podcast as well. So quite happy to.
And would you send me a link to you mentioned a couple of blog posts that you had written. Send me the links to that so we can put those in the show notes as well, so that people can go directly to kind of your thinking about this, and that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I mean, they're not very pretty. I use Canva to do the graphics because you know, I'm not overly creative. It's hard for me to get my ideas out of my head onto
We're not going to worry about that. I think the fact that you have created it and that you've offered these ideas, I think the ideas are really are what's significant, and you know, it's so that's why I think in particular pointing to some of the things you've written, I think is important for engaging people who might want to have further connection with you.
I'm always happy to talk. That's also one of my problems. One of my problems of having quite an even profile is that I do have a propensity to burn out. So I'm always happy to help everyone else at the
I understand. Welcome to my world. So, well, Robin, thank you for being here today. This has been fantastic, and you know, I leave with encouragement and hope for the future, because I think what you're giving to people through this methodology is also a reason for encouragement and hope, and a sense of, oh, this is how I can make contributions, and people, that's what people want, you know, is to know that and have affirmation of that.
People just want to contribute. You know, if they feel valued, then you get so much out of them, and they want to give it.
Yeah, I agree. And those of you who are watching today, I would encourage you to think about this as well. You know, think about the contributions you make, wherever it may be. It may be in your community, it may be at school, it may be in some other form. But when you're making these contributions, it really is valuable, and it's really helpful to strengthen the organization you may be working for, or the community where you live. And it's worth recognizing that and being and saying to yourself, how do I develop this more? How do I contribute more, so that I can have this sense of accomplishment, and that I'm a person of impact? So it's pretty good, Robin. This is pretty good. And so thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Robin. And
thank you, Ed, and thank you everyone.
And we'll see you next time on the Eddy Network podcast. Bye-bye.